Okay, we're live.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Marianne, for making time to speak with me today. I'm actually quite excited to hear the two questions actually we talked about me asking you today, and I'm going to jump right in. So the first one was why you were interested in sharing your thoughts and experiences as a learner on the emotional aspects of learning.
I think a lot of it had to do with at one point asking myself what what why I am the way that I am, and where did it sort of come from? And I've always sort of been a reflective type thinker, and so that's was one of the reasons. The other is that I have no children, but I started when I was looking at myself, I also started noticing things in my siblings and also in their children and their children. And that it made me realize that there were like all these different variations on things that sort of seemed like they went back through the family in one way or the other. And some of them were more complicated than others. Like my one niece didn't speak till she was like 3 years old. And with me, it was more of a reading type and seeing, because I skipped lines and things like that when I read, and it was difficult. And people didn't really back then they didn't have words that they have now to describe things like dyslexia and autism and other things. And so that's sort of, I was wanting it to be where people didn't have to feel like they were alone, that there were ways now where people could get help a lot earlier in order to make learning easier and more fun. And it seems like what I wrote is better than what I'm saying right at the moment. So I'm a little bit frustrated, but speech has always been my major hurdle for myself. Um,
That was wonderful, and I think you're very articulate in speech, and particularly your chapter was particularly well written. I really appreciated what you shared, both about yourself as a learner and how it relates to your practice as a photographer. So I said only two questions, but can you just talk a little bit about what you shared in your chapter about your process as a photographer?
I think I've always been a visual person ever since I was a kid. And I mean, I think I learn equally in a lot of different ways, but I think visual was the main one. And photography wasn't something that I studied in school at all. It was something that I took up when I was about 14 and with family. And then we came to, my husband and I started doing a program in Paris with students, and my accessibility and time for making things decrease. And so I picked up the camera and got interested. I was photographing students during activities, but I was also became very interested in the city itself and the people, and how when being an outsider looking at something, how that's different than the people that are there all the time, see it and have grown up in the culture. So
What you said about being an outsider, and I think especially being a reflective outsider, and my cat's desperately trying to get into this. Like, well, it's just like I've never he seems to know that this is an important video, and so he's got to be a part of it. What you said about being a reflective outsider, I think what really resonated to me and what you wrote was there was something about your practice as a photographer that mirrored your experiences as a young person in school. And I think it was maybe that reflective outsider perspective, because it was a challenge for you to tackle certain subjects in school. And I got the sense that that made you a very independent, self-directed person, and that you're that way in photography and in learning.
I don't know if it's that or if it's being the oldest in a family and having a lot of other outside responsibilities and looking after others and trying to nurture them in certain ways. But I know that I think I think walking in some ways sort of ties everything together in some ways, because walking allows time for thinking and the ideas come, and it also allows time for seeing, which sort of melds it all together.
I like that about the walking. That makes me think of that, just because I'm always looking at it through the learning lens of self-reflection, the importance of taking time to work through things. You don't always have to have the answer straight away. It takes time sometimes.
The writing, I always thought that grammar and the grammar was always really difficult for me with writing, but the thought process wasn't. So I knew that I had the intelligence and the ideas. It's just that it was really hard to get whatever had soaked in to come out. And writing always seemed to be a way that it didn't have to be right the first time. You could do it over and over and over again. And it's like these pages that I have that I typed out, I've gone back today and there's this whole scribble on this page that nobody else could figure out how to insert it into. And it's like right now, it feels like everything is there, but it's not wanting to come out. Has what has always been troubling to me. It's like I sometimes speak and the words fall off at the end and somebody else completes the sentence, or I just have to think for a long time in order to get the idea to come out. It's okay for talking to somebody one-on-one, but often if you're like in a large group or a lecture situation or something like that, it's more challenging, at least for me. To not sound stupid, because I think a lot of times you're seeing an image of me now, so you know my age, kind of whereabouts. But I think when I talk to somebody on the phone, my voice and things often sound like I'm a lot younger than what I am. And that's like those things that are different that don't exactly meld together. Photographing, I think because I see things quickly and and the speech and stuff is more slow, it's interesting how, for me, the way metaphors and different things come out in the visual images, that speaking is more of a challenge for me. And I know that there are a lot of there's all these different variations in these melt in of what people have as challenges, but I think people should know that they're not alone and that there's always somebody out there that they can reach out to in order to either discover ways of working around whatever it is that they're having difficulty with. And that hopefully there's a teacher or a therapist or somebody that can be a mentor and help guide them so that they feel better about reading and writing or whatever. And as I've gotten older, some of that has faded more to the background. So I don't know if aging has something to do with it or not. I know that because I wasn't classified into a certain box, that I didn't feel like I had a crutch or something that I had to overcome or an excuse. And nobody was like saying, oh, well, you're just this and you're this, It's like I know now through various things that I've read and I've looked into that, that I'm probably a little bit dyslexic, a little bit of there's probably some autism in there on a low grade somewhere, and that I'm just lucky that I'm a special Marianne stew with all of this stuff. And that I was lucky enough to have an IQ that helped me to discover some of this for myself and work it through.
I appreciate so much. It was really important for me that people see learners, that you're all individuals. And sometimes when it's your job, maybe less for teachers because they're in the class facing their students, but for people like me as an instructional designer, the learners just can become a blur. It's just a blur of humans out there that I don't interact with. So I really was so appreciative that you were willing to share your experiences with people like me in the learning field so that we remember that every one of you is an individual, and developing learning programs. It's hard to do on an individual basis because I can't create an individual program for every single learner. But if we think about how each learner may be experiencing a program, especially from an emotional perspective, that's what interests me. Building in support so that learners don't feel like they're alone. Exactly what you said, that somebody is paying attention to what their needs are and how they're feeling and what they're going through, and providing as much support as we can. So it was just so gracious of you to write that chapter. Thank you.
Yeah, I was, I learned a lot about myself, looking back and no, I appreciate you asking me to do that.
That, so you've led into my second main question, which I think you've sort of answered in a way, but what would be one thing you feel like you did learn from writing the chapter?
I think I learned that I'm actually more confident about my writing and expressing myself through writing than I thought that I was. And I think that because of various I think that various correspondence that I've had through email with various people, not necessarily about this project, but just in general about my experiences or places and things that I've seen, that also has like boosted the confidence in my writing. And I found that if you have good editor or editors, if you have good readers, if you have Microsoft Office that will help identify spelling errors or when you've used the wrong word, or that you should put in a comma here or something like that, that that is really important for me, and I'm sure it helps others too. I don't like it when they suggest that I should use other words necessarily. Uh, but um, but I think that it allows, if you have those good support behind you, that allow you to keep your voice and not lose your voice, because a lot of times editors have their own style of writing, which doesn't necessarily uh, hold your ideas, not necessarily hold your ideas together, but makes them stay within your voice so that it doesn't sound like somebody else has written this part and you've written that part. I think that's one thing that I've learned a lot, and I appreciate that, what you've done, it's like with helping me with that. And my husband was very good too at saying, oh, well, maybe you need to expand this, or maybe say this in a different way without telling me how to say it. Or if I got to a point where I was frustrated, because I always knew when I wrote something when it was like gobbledygook or not clear. It wasn't clear to me, but I'd be stuck and I couldn't figure out how to get myself out of the ditch in order to make it flow better. And so I appreciate it when people, when he could do that, or when you could do that, and get the ideas sort of flowing in a, whether I chose a chronological way or just an idea way of moving back and forth.
It was very kind of you. Thank you.
And
Editing was definitely tough. The first time I do it, and I was like, oh my God, it's just exactly that challenge of, I don't want to impose, I can't impose it's not my story and it's not my style, but working with different people on different texts to help, just try to help. I'm sure I didn't do a perfect job, but like try to help the ideas come out as clearly as possible is a huge learning process for me too.
because I don't write like an academician in terms of, and I don't, and I write from a detailed perspective. A lot of times where the writing and the picture making often complement each other sometimes, or sometimes the writing says something that an image can't, or vice versa, the image says something that the writing doesn't really portray.
Marianne, we're already good. This is perfect.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I hope you can get something out of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that was awesome. I couldn't have asked for anything different or better than that. That was brilliant.